Okie dokie, everybody, here we go. Good morning. Happy Monday. Hopefully your weekend was all right. We are here for the Astro-Babble, where we are going to look at 5 charts donated by you, my lovely followers. We're just going to talk about star stuff. And as I read these 5 charts, if you would like to donate your chart to the live stream, you can always private message me with your birth date, birthplace, and exact birth time, and I will add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient, but I will message you when your chart is featured. But yeah, now that the election stress is over, I get to do these again because we have a new president. Woo! Anyway, so let's go ahead and we will get down to it. Just as an FYI, if any of you are interested in scheduling a private consult or working one-on-one or maybe learning astrology, you can always hit up my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com, for that info. Good morning, Stephanie. Good morning on Instagram. Good morning, everybody on Facebook who's jumping on. Let's go ahead and move to our first chart. All right, so our first chart is going to be Kay. Kay, how are you, my dear? Oh, that's nice. I like that. That's a good way to start off a chart. Oh, okay. There's the kicker. All right, we can work with this, Kay. We can work with this chart. So we have Gemini on the rising, and Gemini on the rising immediately gives that kind of mental air energy to the chart. Gemini is a very intellectual sign. It's a very curious sign. It's a sign that really knows how to exercise its mental and emotional extremes, jumping from one topic to another very quickly, right? And the natural pairing for this sign would be another air sign, right? And in this chart, in Kay's chart, we have Gemini on the rising, which means Mercury is ruling the chart. And in Kay's chart, we have Mercury in the ninth house in Aquarius. And the ninth house is a very intellectual house. It's the house of higher learning, right? It's also the house that's associated with spirituality and travel and foreigners. It's a very Mercury-oriented house, actually. And for it to be in the air sign of Aquarius, there's nice elemental synergy between the ascendant and the ruler of the chart, which is fabulous. I really enjoy this combination. And when we have the ruler of the chart in the ninth house, it means that the topics of travel, foreigners, higher education, and spirituality are going to be very, very important and prevalent within Kay's life. So that's kicking us off rather lovely. And then we have the moon in Aries in the 11th house of friendships and tribes and social groups. Now, the moon doesn't necessarily like to be in Aries. Aries is the sign of Mars that is rather competitive and initiating and act first, apologize later, right? Whereas the moon's natal sign of Cancer, she prefers to be more loving and more compassionate and less forward and dramatic. It's the water and fire kind of clashing, right? So to have a moon in Aries in the 11th house, there is a craving for that competitive friendship energy in Kay's chart, which can be fun. It can be very stimulating. It can be rather emotionally taxing. There may be some anger issues with friends if that moon is channeled ineffectively. So just understanding that moon is not necessarily the watery emotional moon that we see in different charts, but instead we have moon in Aries in the 11th. So there is that kind of warrior energy that's brought into the house of friendships. Sun in Capricorn is where we round out the top 3. Sun in Capricorn is in the 8th house of business. Love to see Capricorn and a primary placement in the 8th house of business with Capricorn. It's absolutely lovely to bring forward a lot of that entrepreneurship space. Also, the 8th house is a house that is prone to misunderstandings. It's a house of death and taxes and estates and other people's money, often dealing with clients and business. And Capricorn is the sign that navigates those waters very, very well. So I like that space. I like that Capricorn sun being in that area. And And I do like that being a grounding influence for that Gemini ascendant, because that Gemini ascendant and that Mercury in Aquarius do tend to be kind of all over the place, gavaging and learning and trying to suck up all the information. And then Moon in Aries just wants to play with friends over on the side. And Sun in Capricorn really comes into the chart in the 8th house of business and says, no, there's a focus. No, there's a determination here. No, there is something that we're working towards. We cannot spend time on those things that are frivolous. And I enjoy that balance for sure. Now we need to start to unpack relationships, because there is some difficulty here that we need to understand. First and foremost, great news in regards to the relationship house in this chart. We have Jupiter and Sagittarius in the 7th house of relationships. The Lord of luck and abundance in his home sign of Sagittarius is just chef's kiss. Excellent. It also does flavor the lover. It also does flavor the type of person that Kay is attracted to. Jupiter is the planet of rapid expansion for a reason. It often, when paired with Sagittarius, is a very flamboyant personality, somebody who commands the attention of a room, somebody who's very charismatic, but also has that really infectious laugh. Often when we see Jupiter in the 7th, it's literally having a physically bigger spouse than you. And then we also have Venus here, so both benefics in the 7th house of relationships. I'd say that that's pretty good. But we're looking at somebody partner-wise who's going to be more charismatic, who's going to be more adventurous, more philosophical, more truth-seeking, all those things that Sagittarius would represent in a chart. Now we do have an issue here as well, because Mars in Virgo is retrograde in the 4th house of family, making a square to that Venus. And Venus is actually applying to that square, which makes it even worse. So we have conflict between the 4th house of family and the 7th house of relationships. There will likely not be an agreement on who Kay chooses as a spouse and the family. Now, this is something that Kay can easily avoid by well, it may also be the cause of the issue, and this is where we get into the art of interpretation with astrology, with natal astrology specifically, is the Mercury that rules the chart is also ruling the 4th house of family, which connects the idea of being abroad, of being well-traveled, of being foreign, to the family dynamic. And when we see that foreign dynamic squaring Venus, it's the idea that the ingrained culture of the family, which may be foreign, does not mesh with the culture of the incoming lover. And there being conflict here in regards to, this is the way that I was brought up, this is the way that you do things, you do not do things the other way. And Venus and Sagittarius is all about, we do things every way. Jupiter and Sagittarius is, let's try all the things. Unfortunately, the family is very set in their ways and will not understand unless the spouse kind of, I guess, culturally appropriates would be a good thing to, a good way to say it. Like, it's not a good thing because it erases the culture of the spouse, but because of that 9th house significance, or spiritually, 9th house is spirituality, so it could be a literal religious aspect that needs to be understood and worked with. But the idea of family conflict with the spouse is very much in the chart itself. Family is definitely tied to the life's mission as well, because this Mars in Virgo is ruling the North Node in Scorpio in the 6th house of work, health, and pets. Understanding the virtues of work, but especially working for the family or working for the home or in real estate. That's something that the chart kind of needs to understand, the hidden power of that. Also, from a medical perspective, we need to be aware the North Node kind of blowing up the Scorpio body systems of the reproductive, the colon, the bladder, the sinus, those areas becoming inflamed or engorged, especially with Pluto and Scorpio being here. The idea of hidden medical issues in those places needing to be taken very, very seriously. So if any particular pain or discomfort arises in those Scorpio body systems, we need to be on top of that very, very much. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this chart. So thank you, Kay, for donating your chart to the live stream. Let's just real quick pop over Um, good morning, Leah. Good morning, everybody who's jumping on Facebook. Let's go ahead and Instagram as well, which is Besippin Berserk, Booty in the Ariel. I love the Instagram names, honestly. Okay, let's move on to chart number 2. Chart number 2 is going to be Yvonne. Yvonne, my dear, my darling, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Taurus ascendant, and then Mars and Taurus in the first. That brings forward some inflammatory neck and thyroid issues from a medical perspective. Mars is the planet that brings heat, right, and activity. And Taurus rules the thyroid, the neck, the ligaments. So inflammatory ligaments, inflammatory neck space, inflammatory thyroid or metabolism. All those things would need to be kind of respected from a medical astrology perspective. But then, like, when we look at Taurus on the ascendant, you know, Taurus is the fixed earth sign. It's known for being stable. It's known for being predictable. It's known for being normal. Yeah. But Mars comes in. Mars, the planet of fire and action and initiation, you know, ruler of Aries, and starts to shake things up. It's kind of like putting jet boosters on a cow. Or a bull. Like, that bull wants to just kind of stay put and graze in the field and not go fast. And then Mars is like, nope, we're going fast. And it's that idea of that steadiness is somewhat compromised. It's kind of like raging bull syndrome with that Mars and Taurus energy. So Taurus, you know, one of the things that I hear over and over and over, and I've seen over and over with Taurus, is they are prone to bouts of anger and aggression once they realize that they can't bottle things up anymore. They just explode it, and that Mars might actually double that explosive tendency of Taurus. But there's a very strong maternal energy in the chart as well, which I absolutely adore and love to see. Venus in Cancer and the Moon in Cancer in the third house of writing and teaching and communication, being so prevalent in the chart, and so beautifully placed and compassionate in the third house of writing, teaching, and communication. Yvonne, if there is really a sweet spot in your chart for teaching. If you're not teaching, you should, especially because that Venus in Cancer is ruling the 6th house of work. You need to be out in front of people. You need to be telling people what you think. You need to be sharing your wisdom with the world, because first and foremost, you do it in a very compassionate way, in a very nurturing way, but you also need that for your personal growth as well. You know, a lot of your life has been you figuring out how to be of service, you know, with this North Node in the 6th house of work. The idea of you specifically trying to figure out your lot in life through being the person who supports others. I think it's one thing to help other people check off their to-do list and to kind of be the second in command and to clean up other people's messes, but it's another thing to teach them how to live their life in a way to where they don't need you, right? That is actually the energetic crux of Cancer, is Cancer, who is literally the sign of the mother and the maternal archetype, right, regardless of gender, is so blessed with her compassion. But then at a certain point, Cancer gets very, very frustrated and resentful that the love is not returned. And one of the ways that Cancer can kind of transcend and surpass that frustration is by actually teaching people how to take care of themselves, right? And that being kind of the higher function of Cancer. Let's see, where do we want to go next? There's a lot happening in the chart. Leo Sun and Uranus and Leo in the 4th house of family. That's some pretty crazy family dynamics, Yvonne. I'm not going to lie. Your Mars is also squaring that Uranus. Like, ooh, family is so triggering for you, my dear. So triggering. Like, it really brings out your Leo. It really brings out your need to be the center of attention and for you to kind of guide and radiate and you know, share your energy with your tribe. But at the same time, you know, it also triggers a lot of your passions to an unhealthy degree, I would say. Because Uranus Uranus is the planet of unpredictability, and that can be very rocking to the nervous system. So we just need to be aware that the family dynamic needs a little bit of extra buffer before you start to engage with them. Make sure you're not already on the edge of that kind of Mars and Taurus blow up. Let's see, a Mercury retrograde and Pluto in Virgo, both Mercury and Pluto in Virgo in the 5th house of creativity. That's interesting. So whenever we see a Mercury retrograde in the chart, it indicates a communication dysfunction that tends to happen. And this is probably one of the reasons why you don't speak or teach more, because you feel like your words just don't land the right way. It's kind of Tower of Babel syndrome. Like, you're saying what you mean, but the words just don't come out in the way that you want them to. And one of the things that I can offer to you as a piece of advice with anybody who has Mercury retrograde in a chart is to script things out beforehand as much as you can. Write it down in an email, let somebody else look at that email, or let the email sit overnight and then proofread it the next day before you send it. If you're going to have an important conversation with somebody, literally script it out. Write down what you would say, write down what they would say, and script out the conversation so you know your talking points, you know their talking points, and you're able to have an exchange of information that's productive, as opposed to you just going in cold and getting your words mixed up. Neptune in Scorpio in the 7th is a tricky placement. Neptune in Scorpio period is kind of a tricky placement, but to have it in the 7th, Neptune and Scorpio produce a rather toxic combination of secrets, which can manifest in things like alcoholism, but also the need to spiritually withdraw. Lots of dynamics with that Neptune and Scorpio, but it is in the 7th house of relationships. So one of the things that you'll need to constantly rectify in regards to your major relationships is the idea of potentially how escapism and secrets play out within that dynamic, and how maybe one fuels the other, and we're not avoiding the deeper kind of karmic work just because it's easier to hide, or easier to kind of alter reality in a way that is favorable, or kind of dig into your own emotional safety nets and tangle yourself in the process. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about in this chart? If you haven't considered this, Yvonne, you would do very well. Oh, wait, no, I misinterpreted that. Just kidding. I was going to say something, but now I'm not. Yeah, again, back to the writing, teaching, speaking, that every time I go somewhere else in the chart, I just keep being pulled back into that space. Well, let me just kind of leave it off on this note. So you would actually do very well if you wanted to integrate health and wellness work with the dying, with hospice care, with people who are about to make their end-of-life transition. You would actually, just as something else to think about, you would do very well in that space, not only because of your compassionate Cancer moon and your very steadfast Taurus ascendant, but also because Saturn is in the 8th house of death, ruling your 10th house of success, and that whole process, your legacy of touching those who are about to kind of cross the veil, that's definitely written into the chart in some way, shape, or form. Cool. Okay, so that is chart number 2. Let's see. Yeah, so Leah on Facebook asks, how can I get my chart read? If you would like to submit your chart for the live streams, just private message me your birth date, birthplace, and exact birth time. I will add you to the list. The list is rather long, so please be patient, but I will message you when your chart is featured. And if you wouldn't like to wait, or you wouldn't like your social media, your chart social media debuted, we can always work one-on-one through a private consultation, which you can find on my website, ScorpioRisingAstrology.com. Okay, here we go. Karen is chart number 3. Woo! got a Mercury retrograde, Sun in Sagittarius, Ascendant in Sagittarius, kicking it off. Jupiter is in Taurus, also retrograde in the 6th house of work, health, and pets. That is a workaholic tendency if I ever did see one. Moon in Gemini, I like that. I like that a lot, actually. It's really counterbalancing. Venus in Capricorn, that's a good financial placement. Ooh, an exalted Saturn in Libra. That's fun. That's very fun. Can join Neptune. Okay. Okay. Political activism. I see. I see. Yeah, and that's where the writing, the teaching, the speaking comes out too. So fun, Karen. Let's kind of dig into your chart a little bit. So I'd actually like to start with that Saturn because it is the strongest planet in your chart. An exalted Saturn is a brilliant thing, especially when it's conjoined Neptune in the 11th. That allows you to have this stern vocality, this ability to hold your composure and to be very comfortable in your own wisdom while you're communicating and sharing in a very equal and justified point of view. But Neptune brings in just the right amount of fantasy to that. And the 11th house is the house of large groups and friendships and tribes. And when it's ruling your literal 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication, you know, it's this very strong teacher energy that you bring into the chart, which I think is glorious, really. I think it's super fun. I think it's very you, especially because you have Mars in Aquarius. That's a very impassioned place for you to be, the 3rd house of writing and teaching and communication, and for it to be connected to an exalted planet. It's lovely. Lovely. Really like to see that. And as you identify with a Sagittarius, this is where it gets kind of unclear, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, well, my sun sign. Well, newsflash, you are more than your sun sign, right? Your sun in Sagittarius, it allows you to be that thrill seeker, that truth seeker, that happy-go-lucky, humorous, kind of sparkle or twinkle in your eye that's slightly mischievous, you know, all the things that we would see with that mutable fire Sagittarius. But where you get your sternness, your I would hesitate to say regality because it's not a flamboyant regality. It's a stern claiming of power, right? That's from your Saturn, and that's brilliant. That's the strongest part of your chart by far. I really like that space for you. Let's see. What do we want? Yeah, so when we look at that Sagittarius energy, what's interesting about it is we have both Ascendant and the Sun in Sagittarius. So we have a double dose of that mutable fire. So I really would kind of ask you to research that part of you. You know, it's the happier optimist side of you, whereas the Saturn in Libra is all about kind of the facts, and justice only has one right side. Yeah. Whereas Sagittarius is open to all possibilities and really wants to adventure out and discover those possibilities. The ruler of your chart is also in the 6th house of work and health and pets, which is where I get that workaholic tendency, because when we have the ruler in the 6th, it's definitely somebody who constantly is throwing themselves into their work. Let's see what else. Ruler of the 6th house of work is in the 2nd house of finance, so there's probably going to be some sort of finance component to your job. Your ability to work with money, I really enjoy it. Your Venus is in Capricorn, ruled by that exalted Saturn, and connected to Jupiter in the 6th. I like your perspective on money. It is both indulgent but rational. Yeah, you understand the true value of what it means to spend and to have. Let's see. We do have some issue with the relationship house. Now, when we look at the relationship house, the moon in Gemini here indicates that you're really attracted to somebody who has a strong sense of emotional intelligence, somebody who has a wide array of feelings and thoughts. Yeah, you really like to keep things interesting in the romantic department, because that Gemini is such a chameleon and such a curious sign. And your moon is here. You know, when we sensitize the seventh house with the moon, it's just you completely being able to give your heart over to somebody. Now, your mind, on the other hand, is in the first house of self and is retrograde, but ruling that moon via Gemini. And that's kind of Astro-Babble for, although they may be able to claim your heart, your mind will always be yours. However, your mind will always be in conflict with them in some way, shape, or form. And this could be, you know, we talked about Mercury retrograde in the last chart being always bringing forward some form of communication issue, always bringing forward some sort of slipped tongue or misaligned word, or something of that nature, where Mercury tends to get things backwards and screwed up. And for that planet to rule your moon but also oppose your moon in the seventh house of relationships, we find that there's a mental emotional disconnect with your partner a lot of the times, where you might need to actually sit down and have more focused conversations, which again, like that exalted Saturn ruling your third house of teaching, like, you know how to sit somebody down and have a direct conversation with them, right? So just understand that when it comes to investing in your relationship and moving your relationship forward, it's going to take those heart to hearts where you really express your truth in a very clean, concrete, but calm and rational way, as opposed to that moon in Gemini feel, which is kind of all over the place and ifs, ands, or buts, you know, out the wazoo. I think that's pretty much about it. Yeah, yeah, cool. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you donating your chart to the live stream. Let's just go real quick, check in with the comments. Good morning, Leah. Good morning, Ishmael. Let's go ahead and continue to chart number 4. Chart number 4 is going to be Ed. And I see Millie Faye jumping on. Your charts are officially up. So we have Ed. Ed is first. Let's take a peek at Ed. Uranus in Scorpio, ascendant in Scorpio, ruler of the chart is an exalted Mars. That's fun. Sun is separating from a square. Venus in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, conjoined in the 4th house. Very intellectual family. That's fun. Oh, and a trine to the moon with the sun. Oh, Cancer. Cancer, Cancer. Okay, let's break it down. So Uranus in Scorpio is shocking secrets, right? Unpredictability of Uranus paired with the deep underbelly, kind of darker, hidden aspect of Scorpio in the 1st house of self. From a medical astrology standpoint, Uranus in Scorpio will produce irritable bowel syndrome. And will make the bladder, the colon, the sinuses, and the reproductive area rather unpredictable and upsetting in general. So we need to medically kind of control that. But then also internally, you know, Uranus is that planet that's associated with natural disasters. And when we see that in the hidden underbelly sign of Scorpio, you know, it's often that need to keep shocking secrets very private. And that being part of Ed's makeup right off the bat. Now, where he's able to channel and utilize a lot of that deep dark Scorpio and that really shocking kind of lightning bolt of Uranus is in the 3rd house of writing and teaching and communication. We do have an exalted Mars here, which is glorious, applying to a sextile with that Uranus. Flawless. I really like it. An exalted Mars in the 3rd house really brings forward strong themes of writing, teaching, and communication. Mars is normally that planet of go, 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 do, do, do. But to put it in the tough cardinal earth sign of Capricorn, I always think of exalted Mars as this really strong sports car. Like, it's built really well and it's flashy, but it's also able to go really fast in a channeled way. And I like that energy in the 3rd house. I really, really do. But there is also conflict in this formation because the ruler of that third house is Saturn in the ninth. And so one of the things that Ed's going to struggle with is the idea of intellectual authority lording over him, because he has the worst, one of the worst Saturns we could possibly have in a chart. Saturn in the maternal sign of Cancer and retrograde. It's pretty tough. Indicating that the ninth house of travel, foreigners, higher education, spirituality, those are no-no topics for Ed. Those are very, very difficult spaces for Ed to navigate. But in contrast, very easy spaces for Ed to navigate in the third house of writing and teaching and communication. So it's not necessarily about learning this time for Ed. It's about claiming personal power, stepping up to the podium, and sharing what is known. Then we get into the fourth house of family, which has a lot of interesting things happening. The sun is here in Aquarius, so there is a need to identify egoically with the family and to attach oneself to the family unit. We also have Mercury in Aquarius and Venus in Aquarius conjoined at 21 degrees, which is a rare formation, in the fourth house of family. So there is a strong intellectual tint to the family. There's also an emotionally distanced flavor to the family, because Aquarius is the rebel, but in being a rebel, it isolates, right? And so Mercury being here with Venus, who is goddess of unconditional love, Mercury who is lord of the mind, they come together and they form this alliance where it's like, I understand you, but I do not love you because I am incapable of love. It is that hyper rationalization of Aquarius that I find problematic in the fourth house. But that doesn't stop the pursuit of that love. However, the true love in Ed's chart will only be unlocked when he's able to write, to teach, to speak, to open the third house, and use that innate wisdom to serve others. So Ed, if you're not a teacher already, you should be. Let's see. Moon in Gemini in the 8th. You know, this is a rather intuitive placement. It's a rather intuitive placement for sure. It also brings forward themes of death in the family, because that Mercury is ruling the moon from the fourth of family. Yeah, I think part of your karma, Ed, is actually to break down and disassociate from the family dynamic. I think that's such an interesting choice, and that's where I think the Uranus comes in, is the disruption principle. Like, you're here to understand for sure, but there's no way that you can separate somebody's truth from your truth without, saying, hey, you're different, and whether or not I want that difference in my life is my choice. Yeah, so your work is so internal this time around, despite being so externally motivated by your writing, teaching, speaking. Really nice place to Jupiter in Pisces, in the 5th house of children and parenting, as well as the house of creativity, as well as ruling the 2nd house of finance. Yeah, okay. If you don't have a side business where you make something, I think you could earn a little bit of extra cash on the side. Yeah. Also, the truest value of your life is going to be children. This North Node in the 2nd house of wealth and money being ruled by the 5th house of children and parenting and creativity. I think it's really the phrase, life is what you make it. And when you literally, like in case of like making children, or in the case of making a product or a something that you make by hand that is also kind of made by you, that is kind of like a child, you understanding the wealth, the value of those things is going to be very important throughout the life. Interestingly enough, any spouse that you choose will actually resonate very highly with the family, which I think is fun, um, as opposed to your disassociation and your difference of perspective. We have here Venus in Aquarius ruling the seventh house of relationships from the fourth house of family. So despite that kind of issue that you're going to need to tackle with the family dynamic, the spouse that you choose might even be chosen by the family or introduced to you by the family, or will actually have really great synastry with the family dynamic, and will potentially help you come to terms with that experience, even though you will always view them as hidden enemies. Yep. Okay. Cool. I think that's pretty much it for this chart. So we are done with Ed. We've got one more chart to go. So glad you're loving it, Ishmael. And thank you everybody for continuing to join me. Got one more chart, and the last chart of the live stream is going to be Jerry. Let's take a peek. Oh, that same exalted Mars is right on the ascendant. So funny that you two found each other. Absolutely hilarious, because there is such a strong connection here. With an exalted Pisces, exalted Sun. How many exalted planets are in this chart? Moon. Oh my God, Jerry. What? What? You almost have more well-placed planets than me. Crazy. Wow. Exalted Mars on the 1st, exalted Venus in the 3rd, exalted Sun in Aries in the 4th, Moon in Cancer in the 7th, Jupiter in Sagittarius in the 12th. Damn. Damn. Blessed. Hashtag blessed. Super cool. Always super cool to see this. So when we see a large amount of planets that are properly placed, we say that this person is blessed by the gods, and we say that because the planets in their energetic expression are in their home base or in their place of strength, right? And because of that, there is a natural affinity, there is a natural blessedness that comes forward in the chart. And no matter how bad it gets, there will always be these moments of literal divine intervention within the chart. So that's kind of something to understand and be aware of. Exalted Mars in Capricorn, we kind of already talked about this, the idea of the vroom vroom, like sports car energy in the 1st house. Really well placed. I love it. Interesting. The Sun is in Aries, being ruled by that exalted Mars from the 4th house of family, making a square to that placement. Fascinating. When we look at an exalted Sun and an exalted Mars, especially when we look at 1st house of self, 4th house of family, and the conflict therein, we see an echo, from the previous chart. There is this need to identify with both self and family. There's this need to be you, and then the need to be you in a space or a close-knit circle, which can often dilute, the idea of you. But Mars is technically ruling the Sun, so despite its exaltation, Mars wins out, and your personality is stronger than anybody who would challenge you, so that's fine. And that Sun is opposing Uranus in the 10th, so it's weakened. Anyway, moving on in the chart, this absolutely adorable Moon in Cancer in the 7th house of relationships. So sensitive, so emotionally vulnerable, so in need to fulfill, all of those typical caregiving roles that we would see in a relationship. Like, we have to understand that your love language is being just the emotional ball of goo that Cancer is in a relationship. You know, how dependent they are on the emotional state of their partner, how much they constantly want to give to that partner, to show and demonstrate their love through acts of service and care, and affection. You know, all of that really just touchy-feely Cancer energy in the 7th house of relationships. But that's also kind of what you're attracted to. There is a level of fire, a level of fierceness with that Mars and that Sun being so strong and so exalted and so focused and so determined, right? And then when it comes to spouse time, when it comes to partner time, when it comes to you being with somebody that you feel you can actually be intimate with, all of that has to collapse. You know, all of that has to be soaked. All of that has to be diffused into this puddle of just love and compassion. There is no other choice. Let's see. So this is an interesting chart for another couple reasons, because the career aspects are separate from the life purpose aspects. And what is strong in this chart is not necessarily what Jerry is going to be doing for a living. You know, we have the 6th house of work being ruled by Mercury and Taurus in the 5th house of children. So working with children on a regular basis, working with creative aspects of the 5th house, all very possible. Although Saturn in Taurus is a very strict energy to put in the 5th house, so it wouldn't surprise me if that strictness does need to come out in regards to children. However, there is this really soft and vulnerable side to Jerry as well. I think that's what we're seeing, is there's hard and soft really paired nicely within this chart, and they complement each other, the two sides of Jerry. We have Venus in Pisces, who is exalted. She's in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, and communication, which also blesses you with the skills of a teacher. But it is a very Venusian and Pisces energy, which is abundant and flowing and kind of holy grail-like. It is the cup that overfloweth with compassion, in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication, being ruled by that Jupiter retrograde in the 12th. Now, one of the things that I'd like you to understand about your life, Jerry, is that a large part of what will fulfill you and what will scratch the itch of a lot of your most beneficial placements is you going into places of detriment and teaching and speaking and sharing, right? The 12th house, to give you an idea, the 12th house is the house of hospitalizations. It is the house of jails. It is the house of abuse and deep karmic healing. It is a place where people go to cook physically and mentally and emotionally, and they may or may not come out alive, right? You've decided that a large portion of your energy should be devoted to outreach to those people. And in fact, a large portion of your particular experience will be heightened and will be blessed the more you give of yourself in that way. It's truly miraculous what you'll find. So if you ever feel stuck, I would really find yourself going into the bottom of the barrel of society and just trying to lift other people up, and volunteer and contribute and share and bring that Jupiter in Sagittarius, bring that positive perspective to people who really need it the most. But it will often be through 3rd house topics of writing, teaching, and communication. So that needs to be a thing. That is a karmic requirement of you. Let's see. Yeah, you're here to master money. I get it. Money, especially in connected with children. Budgets. Again, if you were to work with children, in a scholastic setting, you would be the assistant principal or principal of a school. And you would need to work on not just working with the children, but working with the budgets of the school, understanding the finance of the underpinnings of what's actually happening. Yeah, and that Saturn is also ruling your ascendant, which really makes just children and creativity super important to you. But also, both children and creativity take money, and we need to understand and respect that resources, when they are scarce, lead to a lack of support. And how can you say no to certain things in order to achieve that support that is actually needed? Conveying your love through acts of service is one thing when all you have is time and energy and attention. But when you step into an administrative role and you need to understand that, hey, there are tough choices that need to be made, there are budget cuts that need to be made, we need to say no to certain children in order to help those who need it the most. Like, that's a thing, right? But an exalted Mars on the ascendant, no problem saying no. So there's a lot of good synastry in the chart for those decisions. Okay. Cool. So everybody, that is it. We are all done with the live stream for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on Facebook and Instagram. It's been a pleasure to read for you and to share what I do for a living with astrology. If you would like to learn astrology, or if you would like to schedule a consultation, work one-on-one with me, you can always visit my website, scorpiorisingastrology.com, to schedule a paid consultation where we can delve into your chart a little more nuanced than what we're just doing here, kind of flippantly looking at charts cold. And likewise, if you want to learn astrology, I do have online classes. And if you would like to be featured in the live stream, just private message me your birth date, birthplace, exact birth time. I will add you to the list. We will get your chart in the queue, and we'll feature your chart on the live streams. Yeah, but follow me on Facebook and Instagram for my daily forecasts. Follow me on TikTok if you want some funny stuff, or some new sun, moon, rising content that's going viral. But yeah, in the meantime, I'll let you get on with your Monday, and may the stars be ever in your favor.